Hello my dear cooks and scientists, welcome. I'm Uira, this is Arthur. In this video we will see the difference between rinsed and unrinsed rice, and we will compare short rice and long rice. Let's go! Rice belongs to the grass family, whose scientific name is Oryza sativa, and its cultivation began almost 10,000 years ago in many humid regions of tropical and subtropical Asia. There are more than 40,000 types of rice, and it's grown in all over the world. It is an edible seed and forms the basis of the diet of almost half of the world's population. This time we will use white rice that has been refined to remove the outer layers, including the bran and the germ. We'll use short-grained rice and long-grained rice. We measure a cup of rice from each and observe that they weigh 210 grams, for which we keep the mass and volume constant. First, we will prepare the rice without rinsing, for which we use a cup and a half of water for short rice and 2 cups for long-grained rice. Place the rice, the water, and a teaspoon of salt in the pot, stir slightly, and bring to a boil.
Can I use any pot to cook the rice?
No, we cannot use any pot. There are some characteristics that we must take into account, but we will see that in another video. We will use these pots, which are the same and have a space for the rice to swell. We will consider that the rice triples its volume when bringing to a boil. If you use a gas or induction stove, you can put the heat or maximum temperature until boils. But if you use a glass ceramic stove like mine, I recommend using medium heat to bring it to a boil, because the glass ceramic heats up progressively and cools down similarly. It doesn't now cool down immediately. And we want that once it reaches a boil, we lower the temperature to a minimum and cook it over low heat for 15 to 20 minutes or until all the water has been consumed. Glass lids are handy for these purposes because it's possible to observe the amount of water remaining without opening the pot. It is essential that we open the pot at no time during the cooking process, much less stir the rice. After the water has been consumed, the glass lid appears dry, with no or minimal steam compared to a few minutes earlier when a large amount of water was present. Remove the pot from the heat. Again, if you are using a gas or induction stove, simply turn off the heat source. But if you are using a ceramic glass stove, it is best to move the pot to a spot where it is no longer emitting heat. Here you still have to resist the urge to open the pot. We don't touch it. We just move it from the heat, leave the lid on and let the rice rest for 5 to 10 more minutes. Once the 10 minutes have passed, we can remove the lid. Finally, we can see our rice. Perfect! We separate it with a fork gently so not to break it. We observe that the grains are entire. Both rices were cooked perfectly. The long-grained rice took 7 minutes longer to cook. Let's prepare the rinsed rice. For this, we will use a cup and a half of water. We stir gently so as not to break the rice. And I want to reserve this water to observe it later. We remove the washing water and repeat this step 2 more times. We do the same with the other rice. Drain the rice, put it in the pot, and add 1.5 cups of water for short-grained rice and 2 cups of water for long-grained rice. Add a teaspoon of salt, stir slightly, and repeat the cooking procedure. We bring to a boil on glass ceramic stove at medium temperature. Once boiling is reached, we lower the temperature to the minimum to cook over low heat for between 15 and 20 minutes or until the water has been completely absorbed. Let's stand for 10 minutes as in the previous rice. We open the lid and flip with the fork. Wow! I also like this rice. We see entire grains of both short grain and long grain rice. Rice is practically made of carbohydrates, mainly starches, and to a lesser extent, glucose, sucrose, and dextrin. Between 3 and 7 highly digestible protein, composed chiefly of lysine. 1% fat is made up of unsaturated fatty acids such as oleic acid, linoleic acid, and linolenic acid. Although it also contains some saturates such as myristic and palmitic acid. It provides B complex vitamins such as thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin, and minerals such as calcium, zinc, iron, copper, potassium, and manganese. 100 grams of cooked rice provide an average of 365 kilocalories. It is time to look at the rice we cook, both rinsed and unrinsed, long grain and short grain. In all the samples, we'll look at the grains entire, which satisfied me with the cooking method. Yeah. The rice was not beaten, so a cup and a half of water is a good starting point to obtain good short rice. At the same time, 2 cups of water is a good start for cooking long grain rice. Water is a factor that we can adjust. I like the taste of all rice, but I like the taste of the short rice more. This can be influenced by the fact that it's a better quality rice than long grain rice. In the future, we can do another experiment trying aromatic long grain rice like jasmine or basmati. For my taste, a tablespoon of salt, which I added to all the samples, is a lot. For me, the 4 dishes are slightly salty. I usually use 1/2 to 2/3 teaspoon of salt for this ratio. The stickiest rice, unrinsed short rice, followed by short rice, unrinsed long rice, and finally rinsed long grain rice is the less sticky.
Why is your rice short grain rice the stickiest? And why did you use more water to cook the long grain rice?
Good question, Arthur. To answer your question, I need to explain the next. Starches are a chain of glucose molecules linked together. Amylose is a linear starch molecule comprising around 1000 glucose molecules. In contrast, amylopectin is a branched starch molecule with a 3-dimensional structure of between 5,000 and 20,000 glucose molecules. Amylose is a relatively smaller and simple molecule than amylopectin, and can readily settle into compact ordered linked groups. It is capable of forming hydrogen bonds with each other. In contrast, the branched amylopectin cannot develop these bridges or bind strongly. Both types of starch pack close together to form granules. When we apply energy to the rice and the water molecules and the starch molecules move faster. The water enters the starch granules, and as the temperature increases, more water is introduced into the granules, making them soften and swell. By separating the starch molecules from each other, these swollen granules burst open, and the starch begins to escape into the liquid. When the temperature reaches 140 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit, liquid water and solid starch combine to form a gel. Short grain rice has a composition of 12% amylose and the rest of amylopectin, while long grain rice contains an average of 22 amylose and the rest of amylopectin. In short grain rice composed mainly of amylopectin, starch granules expand and rupture at temperatures ranging from 160 to 170 Fahrenheit. In contrast, the tightly ordered chains of amylose molecules require higher temperatures, more water, and a longer cooking time to separate than the looser chains of amylopectin. In the case of long grain rice with a high amylose content, the starch granules break down around 200 Fahrenheit, releasing less starch into the medium. Due to the low amylose content, short grain rice is stickier. Due to the higher amylose content, long grain rice requires more time and more water to cook. The medium is less gooey, allowing the long grain rice to stay separate.
Wow! And in conclusion, what is better, rinse the rice or not to rinse it?
This will depend on your taste. If you prefer a stickier rice that can be made into larger lumps and that you can eat with chopsticks, for example, do not rinse it. But if you want to make sure you get rice with the grains separated, yes, rinse the rice with cold water. But in addition to this, it is necessary to see what we will use the rice for. For example, if we want to make sushi, paella, or pudding, we should use short grain rice. Typically, it is not rinsed because these stews and preparations aim for the rice to remain sticky. We could use medium grain rice like arborio to make risotto, salad, or pudding. On the other hand, if we want to make a rice salad or a pilaf, have it as an accompaniment to other dishes, or reserve it to make fried rice, then we should choose long grain rice such as Morelos, Jasmine, Basmati, or Carolina. The most common long grain rice in Mexico is Morelos rice, with a denomination of origin. If we can access rice from a good source that comes packaged, rinsing it will not be so important, especially if it is a short grain rice. However, if we get rice in bulk that has been in contact with people and other media, I will prefer to rinse it. Even if it's short grain, it will reduce viscosity but still sticks, as we saw in this experiment. The rice that does not need to be rinsed anytime is the rice that comes packaged and enriched with vitamins and minerals. Since these vitamins and minerals are added to the rice in the form of powders that stick to the other surface of the rice, when we rinse it, we get rid of those.
Ooh, interesting. Hey, and what will you do with so much rice?
We'll share it. We are going to have a party and we will invite many friends to eat rice. But we will refrigerate the long grain rice. And then we will make fried rice. Join us to see the following recipe. Thank you for watching us, for sharing your experiments, your results, your questions, and for subscribing.